Hi there, this is Paul McCartney speaking. I'm very honoured to have been asked to MC the introduction to this James Jamerson memorial tape. I'm honoured for a couple of reasons, mainly because his style of bass playing for Motown was one of my major influences when I was learning electric bass. And I know that a lot of the people who are playing and demonstrating his technique on this tape have also been influenced by him. He's one of the greats, so long may the name of James Jamerson live on, and I hope this project goes on to greater heights. It certainly deserves to. Cheers, thanks a lot. On with the Motley.
Well, what can I say? It was my dad. When I was growing up in Detroit in the late 60s and early 70s, I spent a lot of time watching my dad cut all those hits. At that time, being a kid, I was more interested in the hamburgers that the producers brought in the studio than in the music they were playing. But looking back though, there was one thing that became the most valuable concept I've ever learned as a musician. Sitting next to Dad, I watched and experienced what feel was about. Sure, he taught me, scales and fingerings and how to read music, but I could have learned that anywhere. Learning how to make the connection between my soul and my instrument came from checking out what my dad and the rest of the musicians my dad called the Funk Brothers were doing. Very few musicians got the opportunity to learn like that, so I consider myself very blessed. Dad always told me, you'd never be me and I'd never be you. So just be yourself and play what you feel. If you don't feel it, don't play it. This advice sounded pretty simple at the time, but over the years, as my career progressed, I've learned to recognize the wisdom in these words. Now let's see what kind of feel I, James Jamerson Jr., can put in my dad's bass lines on Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. I think some of my dad's greatest works came on Marvin Gaye's records, so I'd like to play another cut from one of his early hits, Ain't That Peculiar. Next, I'd like to play an excerpt from an upright part that Dad played on My Guy by Mary Wells. If the tone sounds familiar, it's because I'm recording with the same instrument that Dad originally used 25 years ago when he cut this song.
This is Will Lee, an American bass player. When I first heard Gladys Knight and the Pips version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine popping out of the speakers of my parents' car radio, it wasn't till a few years later that I sat down and picked it apart and realized that what made that arrangement so amazing was James Jamerson's soul coming out of that bass and grabbing me. This is my version of Grapevine.
My dad's close friends, bassist Chili Ruth and keyboardist Joe Weaver.
I told James that he was too good a player to stay on the upright for so long, you understand? I said, you can always go back to it. I said, but
things are changing.
it's changing and you should switch over and get you an electric bass. He said he didn't want that. I said, well, okay. I said, I'm going to buy me another one anyway. I said, you can have the Black Beauty. He said, well, I'll buy it then. And I told him, he said, that's the sweetest thing he ever did.
He loved it, that bass. And he went on from there. He went on from there. He took it up and started walking with it.
Hi, this is John Entwistle. When I first heard Tamla's stuff in the 60s, I was really impressed by the way the bass fitted the drum patterns and by the inventiveness of the bass lines. I didn't know it was James Jamerson at the time. I just called him the guy who plays bass for Motown. But it wasn't long before every bass player in England had a little bit of James in their playing style. And this is a little bit from a cut by the Temptations called Ain't Too Proud to Beg. This is my favorite Miracle song, Going to a Go-Go. This is a section from a Stevie Wonder song called Contract on Love.
Hi, I'm Gerald Veasley. I started playing bass because I thought it was an easy instrument to master. When I started as a kid in the late 60s, it seemed all you had to deal with was roots, fifths, and simple repetitive patterns, so I thought I was on my way. Well, James Jamerson wrecked my plans. When I first heard Darling Dear on the jukebox at a West Philly hoagie shop, it scared me to death. I realized at that moment how little I actually knew about bass. Jamerson's lines were so melodic and driving that it was almost as though he were singing a duet with Michael Jackson through the bass. Of course, I ran out the next day and bought the record. In listening closely to Darling Dear, I discovered that after the intro, Jamerson played no two measures alike. The bass part was and is a masterpiece of improvisation. At the same time, it always grooves and never gets in the way of the vocals. Well, after 3 days, I had learned little more than the first verse. Now, years later, I've finally learned Darling Dear, and it's still a humbling experience playing it. Now here's one of Jamerson's most driving bass lines in You Can't Hurry Love by the Supremes. Now here's Shotgun by Junior Walker and the All-Stars.
Hi, I'm Phil Chen from Kingston, Jamaica. I was first attracted to the great guitar artistry of Mr. Ernest Ranglin and other great musicians like Lloyd Brevet, Audley Williams, and Colston Chen. Their Latin calypso menta style, along with Carlos Malcolm, Afro-Jamaican rhythms, and the Beatles at that time, made it very easy for me to appreciate the sound of young America and this amazing unknown bass player. My frustration with Ernest ended one night when Colson of the Vagabonds handed me the bass and said, "Take over." I thought, great, only 4 strings. Anything is much easier than copying Ernest. Only to find out James Jamerson proved me terribly wrong. His warm, creative, melodic Caribbean lines, along with Benny Benjamin's solid backbeat, created the Motown sound, and they left an indelible mark on me forever. I had this great opportunity of meeting James, and after executing my version of I Was Made to Love Her, he smiled and asked if I could play on a project he was producing, to which I immediately replied, "But James, I am only a carbon copy of you." He shook his head and said, "But I still want you to play." I was on cloud 9. His style and how he influenced my playing can be heard on the track Scatterbrain by Jeff Beck on the Blow by Blow album. Freddy Nathaniel, the sax player of the Vagabonds, and myself were sharing a flat at that time, and all I could hear him playing was the Four Tops, day and night. One day he secretly confided in me he had this dream. He wanted to be Levi Stubbs. But little did he know I had an even bigger dream. Here is my rendition of the James Jamerson classic bass line on the Four Tops, "Reach Out, I'll Be There."
Motown vocal star Martha Reeves.
He was a mean dude, and he didn't take no stuff off of nobody, and he spoke his mind, and you loved him because he was a man, and he stood up for his word. He didn't know he was good. He just knew he was the best when he played, but as far as his attitude was concerned, he was not an egotist, and he didn't go around blowing his own horn or bragging to people how good he was. Some people that are as good as he is do that. They say, oh, you can't get me, I'm the best. You can't, I wouldn't cut on your session, you got to pay me lots of money. He wasn't that kind of person. He was eager to help anybody do anything, record anytime, anywhere. He didn't know what a genius he was.
Hello, this is Pino Palladino. When I first heard Motown on the radio as a child, there was always something about the music that really touched me. It took me a long time to realize that apart from the great songs, it was James Jamerson's bass playing that was really grabbing me. His influence can be heard on many of today's records and will always be apparent in popular music. This is James Jamerson's bass line from For Once in My Life by Stevie Wonder. Second That Emotion by the Miracles. I'm Losing You by The Temptations.
Hi, this is Geddy Lee of Rush. Like many of you, I never heard of James Jamerson until recently. He's easy to overlook because the great vocals of the Temptations, the Four Tops, Stevie Wonder, and all the other Motown stars are mixed so far in front that the instruments are a little bit lost. However, if you take the time to dig in with your ears, you'll hear some incredible R&B bass playing. And now I'd like to play James' bass lines on Get Ready by the Temptations.
Motown studio guitars, Joe Messina.
I know one time he just stopped playing and says, I refuse to play this song. I don't like it. So they begged him to play. He finally did.
Hi, I'm Chuck Rainey, and I'm extremely pleased and honored to be a part of this James Jamerson Memorial Project. I first met James in 1960 at the Keith 105 Theater in Cleveland, Ohio. I was appearing there with Big Jamie Neely, and James was there with Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. We both were using the same kind of bass system and the same kind of bass, and I especially remember that his strings were set very high from the fingerboard on his instrument, on which I commented, and he also commented on my extremely low string setting on my bass. A player with another group, a bass player that I let use my amplifier, busted my speaker on stage. And James was puzzled why I didn't just plug into his amplifier when we did our act. He made me feel very, very comfortable about using his amplifier for the next show, which I really thought was nice. That kind of thing, usually with the strangers, a no-no. You know, I learned the lesson the hard way. But he said, man, you know, you tried to help that other guy out, so I don't mind helping you out, you know. And I remember that, and I kind of cherish that moment, too. Bernadette is my favorite James Jamerson bass line. It's a classic to me. And while doing this project, I've definitely confirmed, not that I haven't in the past, but at this time on this project, I have really confirmed to myself on how much of an influence this man has had on my style of playing certain rhythms, ghost notes, and some feels. I've definitely emulated his choice of notes and rhythms throughout my career. And through him, that was one way that I found my groove and I found my way. And man to man, we were good friends, and I miss him. This is Bernadette, the Four Tops, 1967. Cloud 9 by the Temptations. This is Keep Me Hanging On, the Supremes.
West Coast and former Motown guitarist, Wawa Watson.
I questioned him about his bass. I said, Jamerson, I said, why are you using a precision? I said, what's the difference in a precision and a jazz bass? And he was telling me like the tone and stuff. And I said, well, what kind of strings you use? Do you know what kind of strings he used to use?
Yeah, he used to use LaBelle Flatwell.
Right.
Yeah.
And I questioned him why. And he said because of the tone of the strings. It was more of a deeper, bigger sound. And he showed me. And I couldn't believe that. And you find a bass player today, they be trying to get a guitar string. But I think anyone that's going to pick up a bass and they want to learn how to play, they should listen to him because it will give them a whole different perspective on bass.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Williams, and I've been the in-house studio bassist for Philadelphia International Records since 1978. When I first started out working for Gamble and Huff, I was a Jamerson clone and almost lost the gig because what worked for James at Motown didn't work in Philly. After I simplified my style so that it would fit in with the Philly groove, everything worked out. But I always feel indebted to James for the melodic and rhythmic concept I learned from studying his style. Aside from his great technical chops, he had the ability to interpret every song in a total original way while maintaining incredible feel and energy. I'm sorry I never got to meet him. He was truly blessed. Now I'd like to play James's bass part from Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell's version of Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Now I'd like to show you how James recreated the same tune on Diana Ross's version of Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Listen how different the attitude is on the first chorus of the tune. Later on in the song, there's a modulation, and again James changes the feel and the attitude. This is the instrumental section before the last chorus. Take a listen.
Early Motown keyboardist Joe Hunter.
Now, when James was working in my band over the Phelps there, we had a little thing going over there with little Willie John. Little Willie John came in, and James was playing bass, Robert White was playing guitar, I was playing piano, and Hank Cosby was playing tenor. Well, you don't tell me what to do. Like I said, Benny was playing drums. So Benny went off one night and we couldn't find him. Okay, when Benny went off, I went and found him, and I found him in the corn liquor. I found him in the corn liquor joint. I found him in the corn liquor joint and brought Benny back. So when Benny came back, Benny came up on the stage and the dancer was dancing, and Benny went to sleep on the damn drums, and the drumsticks fell on the floor. And all of a sudden, I think Hank said, "Hey, Benny, something, him and Jamerson won anyway." And he said, Papa Cedar, and he started playing again, Papa Cedar, bop, bop, bop. And he didn't have but 2 damn drums and a cymbal. So all the rest of them was in the pawn shop. Now, when we got through that night, Phelps had on his big 45 up there in his bosom up there. It's time to get paid. So we went back to the office, and I'll show you how Jamerson protests. Now, here's where Jamerson came in. I didn't know he was that straight, because I really never came up against no war against getting money. Phelps said, well, now, Benny been here all the week, and he been taxed, and he done ran over his salary and done went into y'all. So what I'm going to do is take it out, and I give y'all a ballot. And Jamerson said, hell no. And no, Phelps, then when Phelps heard that, Phelps pulled his pistol out and laid it down. He said, now I'm going to pay you guys off. So at that particular time, Jamerson pulled his pistol out and laid his down. He said, I got a family to feed. That's right. And I pulled my pistol out, and I said, I got a family to feed. And I don't know what Hank was doing then. I think him and Robert White was doing something. But then I know that I had some background. But Phelps laughed and gave us all the money. He gave Benny his money. Now, that's what Jamerson did. Very good, John.
This is Ready Freddy Washington. It was a great honor for me to be selected to play the Motown 25 show because I grew up listening to the driving beat of the Motown sound. It wasn't until the 70s that I found out that it was James Jamerson who made it happen. Over the years, just like a lot of other bass players, I've tried to incorporate some of James's ideas into my own personal style. And any young bass player who's starting out should check him out, because after all, he was the foundation of the Motown sound. Now, I'd like to play Jamerson's lines on I'm Gonna Make You Love Me by the Temptations and the Supremes. Now, I'd like to play the bass part from Girl, Why You Wanna Make Me Blue by The Temptations.
This is Garry Tallent of the E Street Band. I started playing bass in the mid-60s, a very exciting time for pop music. At first, learning how to make the chord changes and keep the rhythm going was challenge enough. But when I started tackling some Motown material, I found even more going on down there. Things like passing notes and percussive thumps and a definite link between the rhythm and the melody. It wasn't until much later I found that it was James Jamerson playing on all these records. Here's my rendition of Baby Love, one of the first records to clue me in on the possibilities of the bass guitar.
Hi, my name is Dennis Coffey. I had the privilege of playing with James Jamerson on Motown sessions from 1968 to 1976. James is mostly known for his R&B bass playing, but he was a great jazz bassist as well. He sat in with my band in 1969 at a club in Detroit called Maury Baker's. The track that follows was recorded by James in the club that night.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. This is the Lyman Woodard Trio without Lyman. Sitting in on bass, we have the bass player, James Jamerson. Let's give James a big round of applause. Just beautiful James. Also, Dennis Coffey on guitar, and yours truly, Melvin Baker. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alan McGrier. I'm a bassist, producer, and songwriter. I met James Jamerson Jr. when we were both in the 7th grade in Detroit. We had several music courses together, so I always knew that James Jr. was a great bass player. But what I didn't know was that his dad was the great bassist on all those hit records that had everyone in Detroit, and I'm sure around the rest of the world, dancing in the street. But I didn't find out about all that until one day at our 8th grade talent show. A few of the parents and teachers got up to jam, and Jamerson Sr., we called him Pops, he brought down the house. I mean, he jammed. As James Jr. and I grew up, on several occasions I found myself at the Jamersons, just hanging out after school. And I got to know the entire Jamerson family pretty well. And getting to know Pops, which was a privilege I'm very thankful for, I found him to be a warm, sensitive, and caring man. In the mid-'70s, the Jamerson family moved to L.A., with Motown moving on and all, but James Jr. finished school in Detroit. And we always talked about playing on the same records and got a chance to do just that. I moved to L.A. and started working with Tina Marie. We had cut all the tracks for Tina's upcoming album on electric bass, and we weren't quite happy with one of the bass tracks. So I suggested to Tina that we call in James Jr. on upright. She agreed, and James Jr. and Pops came to the studio later that evening with the same upright Pops had played on all the early Motown hits. It was great. I mean, it was fantastic. In closing, I guess I would just like to say thanks to the Jamerson family, and most of all, thanks to Pops, for showing us all it's okay to show your feelings on bass, as long as you do it with style and class. Thanks, Pops. Thanks. And now here's my interpretation of James Jamerson's bass line on the Spinners' hit, It's a Shame.
Motown arranger and conductor Gil Askey.
Getting back to what Jamerson was about, they bring a chord sheet in, and I remember one day that I was doing, and Jamerson was playing the chord, and the cat said, "Man, what are you playing?" I said, "I'm playing the chord." And he said, "But man, I want to hear that. I want you to do your thing." "Oh, you want me to do my thing?" And he take the chord sheet and throw it on the floor, and he start playing. And when you would bring him a chart in of the bass line, he would laugh at this, and almost as a resentment, but as a joke. He said, "You trying to write what I play, you know?" Whatever it was is what he created. All them bass lines you hear, that wasn't written, man. I remember I came in, man, and tried to write a part for Jamerson. I put the chords over thing, and he would play what I had written. I said, "Man, that don't sound like what I want to do." He said, "Well, what the hell you want?" I say, "I want you, man." He took it, throw it on the floor. And you see, you couldn't foresee what he would play. He could play a bass line like doop 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 boop boop doop boop 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 doop 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 boop boop boop. It wasn't written for him. People would be in the studio 4 or 5 hours cutting one tune, man. They have to get together. "Well, hey, James, I want you to do your thing." Benny Benjamin might come in, bust the drum heads, no tips on the sticks. He turn it, if the drum was busted, he'd turn it over on the other side. Just said, "Okay, let's go." But it was a feeling, because it was from the heart. So you take it and you you analyze it and you write it out, but you can't write out feeling. You see, there was only one James Jamerson, one.
Hi, my name is John Patitucci, and I feel honored to be chosen to participate in this James Jamerson Memorial Project. James Jamerson's bass playing was responsible for me picking up the bass in the early 60s growing up in New York. And I'd like to express my thanks, and it's just great to be part of this project. The first tune is How Sweet It Is. This classic original Junior Walker recording of the 60s with James playing so incredibly on it is a great example of his shuffle feel and his great sense of swing and time. James' first love was the upright bass, and he used it quite a bit on the early Motown tracks before the advent of electric bass. Check out his line on Heat Wave by Martha and the Vandellas. Mickey's Monkey by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Again, we have a showcase for James' upright bass playing, and this part has some of his signature licks in it, and the groove that he created was an irresistible dance kind of groove, and 25 years later, it still sounds incredible.
West Coast arranger Gene Page.
He used to do things that it sounded like he was going lower than the E
And I thought he tuned down, but he didn't. He just did things harmonically. I used to take down a lot of his bass lines just for reference. See, in other words, because we didn't have them out here. So if I wanted to do an arrangement, I wanted to be really hip, I'd have to keep a library of James Jamerson's licks.
Hi, this is Jimmy Haslip of the Yellow Jackets. James Jamerson Sr. was a big influence on me when I began to play the bass in the early 60s. His rhythmic and harmonic style brought a new innovative sound to the bass, and in my opinion, was the main ingredient to what was called the Motown sound. His style of playing will always be an inspiration to all bass players and will be passed down through the ages. And whether you've heard of James or not, his influence will always be felt, and his musical achievements will not go unnoticed. Now here's a selection that James performed by the Marvelettes called Don't Mess with Bill. Classic Jamerson line, same old song, recorded by the Four Tops. Shake Me, Wake Me, recorded by the Four Tops.
Hi, my name is Bob Babbitt. I feel very fortunate to not only have personally known James as a friend, but to have also worked with him on some of the double bass sessions at Motown Records. His contribution and creative force has been a strong factor with many bass players through the years. He was a bass player's bass player. What more can you say about a style that is still widespread today in contemporary music? Now I'd like to play the bass line that James played on Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell's Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing. And now I'd like to play the bass line that James played on Uptight by Stevie Wonder. Now I'd like to play the bass line that James played on Roadrunner by Junior Walker.
Motown studio guitars, Robert White.
Yeah, man, James Jamerson would not accept help. In fact, he refused help. It's like he had a fatalistic attitude. It seemed that there was something deep-rooted that no one knew about. James died with those secrets. Jameson had something that he could not live with. He did not care how much money he made. He didn't care how famous he became. He just had a death wish. I was as close to him as anybody, in my opinion, and we had some serious talks. We had those, those crying, hugging talks. It was just me and him. There was no reason to hold anything back, and we never got near the source. Never once did we get anywhere near the source. We would have done anything to straighten him out, but we weren't psychiatrists, We didn't know what the hell we were doing. I'll tell you a great story, a great Jamerson story. We were down in Atlanta, Georgia, somewhere down south anyway, doing a session for a producer who wanted that Motown sound. They flew us down there, and Paul Reiser was doing the charts. Paul was late, James was drunk, so they called the baddest bass player in town so that we wouldn't lose any more time. The bass player came in to do the date. He made some remark. He was real cocky, you know. He was one of those real superflies of the area. He could play anything to all the tunes. He came in and he says, "Jeff, who got sick?" And they said, "James Jamerson." The guy made an abrupt U-turn, walked out the door, and we never seen him after that. True story.
Hi, this is Willie Weeks. I had the chance to meet James Jamerson back in 1971 at the 20 Grand Club where he was playing. And we started talking, and we noticed that the hour was getting late because we were having a good time. The man was truly friendly and wonderful. He suggested that he would pick me up the following morning at my hotel. Well, he did. We went out to his home, and I got a chance to meet his family, and the whole thing was just very exciting. And then, on top of that night, he was present for the concert with Donny Hathaway, where I was playing bass with Donny, and I gotta say, I was truly honored. I think I'll always remember James Jamerson and his family. And now I would like to play James Jamerson's bass line on Still Waters Run Deep by the Four Tops. And now I would like to play Jamerson's bass part on My Baby Loves Me by Martha and the Vandellas.
Motown lyricist Eddie Holland.
Matter of fact, that was always the criteria that we would use to feel whether a bass player was good. For instance, if I, like years later, if I would hear about a bass player, we need a bass player, I said, well, is he as good as James? Is he as good as Jamerson? Which I never expected them to say yes, but they say, well, no, but he's close. He's almost. But that was always good enough. If they said almost, then I knew the guy was good. The thing that I noticed in him in the later years is like a person feeling, you know, and I never heard him boast about it, but it's just something that always made me feel in being around him at times that he felt he was an artist, and he felt that his contributions were great, and that he didn't necessarily want to talk about it at that time. He wanted someone else to acknowledge it. And it was always, I always got the feeling this was somewhat burning inside of him, that he is like he's not being acknowledged for the artistic input, his artistic abilities, his talent was not being acknowledged. It's like a person just say, hey, just recognize that I'm here, you know.
My name's David Hungate. James Jamerson has influenced either directly or indirectly virtually everyone who plays the electric bass. To many of us, he provided the original inspiration to learn the instrument. Though there are many incredible musicians in the world, there are very few innovators, and James was one. He invented a style that gave the bass an importance in the rhythm section it had never previously enjoyed. He had the ability to come up with wonderfully intelligent, exciting parts and to play them with a feel and intensity that's never been equaled. I'm going to now attempt to play James' bass line from the Junior Walker record of Home Cooking.
Motown keyboardist and session leader, Earl Van Dyke.
You know, I remember when the producers would line up at the door. They just line up there so they could cut. But you know, a lot of times we needed a breather. So what we would do after we finished one session, we'd always scatter. Like they had a little bar behind the studio where we used to hang out. Also, there was a bar up the street. But next door was Cole's Funeral Home. And sometimes James, and Benny, and myself, we'd go over there just to hide. And we'd go over there and hide and drink. And if they come and knock on the door looking for us, we'd always send a mortician to the door with his rubber apron on, you know, and he'd tell them, no, they're not in here. But we'd be in there laughing like mad because we knew that they weren't going to come in and find us. I tell you what we did one night with Clarence Paul. And that was the night that we cut just a little misunderstanding. It was James, Robert White, and the rest of the guys. We were working at the Chick Chat. Clarence liked to cut late at night, so what he did was he came in. We got off at 2 o'clock, and he called us before 2 and told us we had a session at 3 o'clock at the studio. So when we got off, everybody ran and got some coffee and everything. Of course, we were high or drunk or whatever, you know, and each situation was different. But anyway, we were always tore down. And what happened was Clarence got in the studio, and we had the hardest time. Benny just got the devil in him. And Clarence wanted the slap beat played on 3. And Benny refused to play it on 3.
Now the session started at 3. It was from 3 to 6, and we had to cut 3 tunes. Benny played it on 1, 2, 4, the and of 4, the and of 1, the and of 2, the and of 3. But he would not play it on 3. So about 5:30, everybody jumped on Benny and said, look, Benny, look, man, come on, man. Let's get through now. We're getting sick of this mess. Do you know that we cut the 3 tunes in the remaining half an hour?
Hello, this is Francis Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power. James Jamerson was a very big part of the Motown sound. He was also a very big part of my sound and the sound of lots of other players around the world. I really didn't recognize his influence on my style until much, much later. What I personally learned from him was to play with strength without stepping on anyone else, and to play with others and still stand alone. I regret that I never had a chance to meet James the man, but I'd like to pay tribute to him by playing one of his bass lines. Remember Earl Van Dyke's story a few minutes back about the 3 tunes that were cut in 30 minutes? This is one of them. The Contours, Just a Little Misunderstanding.
Hi, I'm Jack Bruce. In the very early 60s, I started playing bass guitar, switched from double bass, and my main influence on double bass was Charles Mingus. When I started playing bass guitar, I was turned on by the person I later found out was James Jamerson. At the time I heard him, I wasn't aware, as most people in the world are still not aware, that that was James Jamerson. But just a beautiful voice that came out through the airwaves all over the world and changed the whole face of music. I'm very grateful for his existence. I miss him. I wish he was around. I met him. He was a gentleman. One time I was working in the record plant in Los Angeles, and next door to me, Stevie Wonder was recording. Next door to him was John Lennon, and I was recording an album called To the Storm. I was doing a track called Keep On Wondering, which was a kind of a tribute to Stevie Wonder in a way, completely coincidental. And James came into the control room, mistakenly thinking that that was Stevie's session, and then promptly corrected my bass parts and showed me what I should be doing. He was kind enough to give me some sessions around that time too. It's a privilege to know him. And I'm very, very privileged to play his bass line on Come Round Here.
Hi, this is Kenny Arrington. James Jamerson's bass playing has obsessed me since I was a young kid growing up in Brooklyn. His ingenious rhythmic and harmonic approach to bass playing makes his style as challenging as anything being recorded today. For younger bass players who might be focused in on one particular style, I think it's really important to check out what this man did over 20 years ago. And I'm very happy to be able to play a few of my favorite Jamerson bass tracks. This is a great one by the Isley Brothers called This Old Heart of Mine. Even though Jamerson sometimes played very simply, he'd always stick in something real cool that would say, hey, this is James Jamerson playing. Like the 16th note figures in this 1962 track by the Marvelettes called Strange I Know. A lot of Jamerson's style was improvisational, but when he wanted to lay down a repetitive vamp that grooved, he was the king. Check out what one of Jamerson's best two-bar patterns did for this Supremes track called Love Is Like an Itching in My Heart.
Hi, this is Marcus Miller. You know, the thing I like about Jamerson, the thing I really respect about him is that he was one of the most creative musicians around. They used to give him a chart, a chord chart with nothing on it but chords, and he would come up with these bass lines that used to be hooks for the song. They used to really make the song, and I think that's where his genius really came out. So anyway, I'm going to play a song called I Was Made to Love Her. It's a Stevie Wonder tune. Hope you enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Nate Watts, bass player with Stevie Wonder. I first saw Jamerson through the basement window of Motown Studios on Hitsville in Detroit. The first time I met him was in L.A. at the Hallmark Hotel. It's hard to explain how I feel or how great he was, but I'd like to show my appreciation by playing Nowhere to Run by Martha Reeves and the Vandellas.
My dad is mostly known for the recordings he did with Motown, but he also played on a lot of other hits for other record companies. See if you remember some of these grooves. Like Higher and Higher by Jackie Wilson. Rock the Boat by the Hughes Corporation. Funky Fever, The Silvers. Which of Us is the Fool by Robert Palmer. Davis Jr. and Marilyn McCool's You Don't Have to Be a Star.
Hi, I'm Basil Farrington. I grew up listening to James Jamerson, but because I didn't start playing until 1970, I wasn't aware of his virtuosity immediately. As time passed and my playing developed, I was able to really appreciate and grow through analyzing everything that James did. My 4 scratched and destroyed Love Child albums can attest to that. A lot of bassists are aware of what James did, but very few choose to tackle his style because it's so difficult. It's not the kind of technique that you can just casually pick up. I can say without question that what James gave to popular music is a level of craftsmanship that any serious bassist should aspire to. I'm saddened that I never got the opportunity to meet James, but his spirit flows through me every time I pick up the bass. As far as I'm concerned, James is the founding father of the bass guitar, and I'm so honored to be a part of this tribute to him. It's been a long time coming. Now I'd like to play James's bass line from Love Is Here and Now You're Gone by the Supremes. I'd like to play Since I Lost My Baby because I really think it shows what James can do with a ballad. If you really want your hand to hurt for a week, why don't you try this one? This is I'm Wondering by Stevie Wonder.
Motown vocal star and composer Smokey Robinson.
Oh boy, the last time I saw him alive was maybe 6 months or so before he died. In fact, I think that the last person to try to use him on a Motown session was me. And I was using him, I was doing a remake of Get Ready. And I was doing a disco version of it on myself on an album that I had called Where There's Smoke, on which the album that Cruising was on, you know. And I was doing a disco version of it, and I had a guy to play the bass line for me on a demo record, you know. And the style that he had done was, like you said, the new style, the popping and all that stuff like that, you know. And so I wanted that feeling. So I called Jamerson in thinking that perhaps he could play it because I hadn't used him in a long, long time, you know. And he came in, and not only could he not play that, he couldn't really at that point play the basic theme of Get Ready. And he couldn't even play that, man, and I felt so bad. I mean, it was like a real, real bad experience for me because it was like someone that I had known. He was like the champion, you know what I'm saying? And then here he is, he's matched with a bomb, and the bomb knocks him out. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those kind of things, man. It was just really, it hurt me.
This is Anthony Jackson. It seems as long as we've had a music business, we've heard the word genius tossed about very freely. Sell lots of bad records, make a few bad movies, and shake a lot of booty. Any 2 out of the 3 will do, and you will probably be called a genius. So for the time being, let's cut the crap. Let's get down to the real definition of true genius and talk about a particular individual. True genius always has 3 characteristics: original style, technical ability necessary to develop the style, and force of will necessary to push the style on a hostile world. In the early 1960s, a young man by the name of James Jamerson appeared on the music scene in Detroit, carrying a then new instrument simply called the Fender bass. Even then, he displayed all 3 of the aforementioned characteristics of true genius, but within a very few years took all 3 to a devastatingly high pitch. By the time of his death, James Jamerson had clearly established himself among the first rank of 20th century geniuses in music. His name must be ranked alongside others such as Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Charles Ives, Paul Hindemith, Scott LaFaro, Charlie Christian, and Art Tatum. All these individuals changed music as they came in contact with it. All had a profound influence on their peers. All encountered a world which often said, "Just what the hell do you think you're doing?" And all persevered. Now, many will raise their eyebrows and even feel insulted that I've included James Jamerson among the list of others. To them I say, my remarks stand. Keep in mind that some of Jamerson's most brilliant work was found on single B-sides and on tracks buried in the middle of albums. What you're about to hear is one of the latter. How Long Has That Evening Train Been Gone was released on the 1968 album Love Child by Diana Ross and the Supremes. It represents one of Jamerson's towering achievements, and with the contributions of all the others who made the track possible, demonstrates one of Motown's great accomplishments, the rhythm section as chamber ensemble. I hope this transcription and track do some homage to the man who's meant so much to my own development for nearly a quarter of a century.
Motown songwriter and producer Brian Holland.
When he was not playing the bass, you know what I mean, he had a different personality. But when he was on that bass playing music, man, he was happy with a big, bright smile, man. I remember the little crack in his teeth. You could always see that. But he was happy, man, when he played that bass and playing music, man.
We do want to make one comment. I understand that Stevie Wonder's here and would like to have a word, and we'd like to afford that to everybody, and we will afford it to him.
Many times in life, as we grow older, we do understand even more that we really have control maybe of how we do things in our life, but not to God's ultimate plan. The only thing I really have to say about Jamerson, my experience, is that he made a certain fabric of my life visual. Visual in that it was only until I was the age of 12 that I was able to even know what a bass looked like. And it was through his kindness, through his wanting me, as I was called, Little Funk Brother back then, that he wanted me to know what a bass looked like. And how, because I was so impressed with the way that he was able to make that bass did what it did. So even though I cry today, because it is something that we are losing, a very important part of not just black culture, but American culture.